All right, welcome, Pedro. This is
Appreciate
the
it.
new
Thank
studio,
you.
man.
Yes,
Good
sir.
to
It's
good to
to
have
be
you
here.
here.
Good to be here.
Y'all, this is history in the making. I mean, this man, I have seen him just defy the odds, really. Like when I first met Pedro, it was what 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We said a
3 years.
three-year friend
Yeah,
anniversary,
yeah.
and it's just been amazing to see. So I mean, today's conversation, we're getting into everything from the ambition that it takes to succeed, how to really step up, be a man, be a leader in your local community, politics, changing the world, practical stuff. Pedro's been blowing up on social media too. So without further ado, man, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be here. Excited to go ham. It's a long time in the making. I know we did one of these before,
Yes.
like years ago. So it's
Yes.
a long time coming.
Awesome. Well, here, let me just adjust the frame here a little bit. Okay. So this is probably the most scrappy podcast that we'll ever do for the rest of time. See, a lot of people spend all their money and their time on, I got to make the perfect studio, right? It's got to just be ideal, before then they even shoot episode 1. We do it totally different, right? Like, remember the first clubhouses that we would do?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell us, well, first, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then let's go back to the beginning of like us building locally. What was that like for you to jump into that?
For sure. Well, I mean, quick intro, right? How far right do you want to go? The real question.
For now, give us just like the more recent what you're working on, and then in a bit we'll get into more of Pedro's origin story.
For sure. So yeah, lately working on some really disruptive projects, and we're building like a multi-billion-dollar company. And not just saying that like we have it mapped out, right? But yeah, really disruptive stuff in education and politics, just overall. Like if you look at the world right now, there's a lot of problems, whether it's war, poverty, corruption, a lot of things need to change. And, I mean, I know about you. A lot of people just like to complain about that stuff. I know you're not like-minded like that, but, a lot of people just like to complain and not do anything, not take responsibility for that. But like, who's going to change that? If not you, if not us, if we don't stand up, we've just kind of accepted a lot of these problems. So working on some really disruptive stuff there, building massive communities here in Minnesota, and yeah, overall just going to the top. I mean, that's what it's about.
You're looking at the future governor of the state of Minnesota. See, it's so funny because like we'll hang out a lot of times, and some nights we'll be eating dinner, over here at my house, and we're like, yeah, I'm excited for in a few years or a decade when we're hanging out at the governor's mansion. We know what it is. It's in St. Paul on Summit Avenue, right? We used to go to all those things downtown and all that. So it's really it's not just fun. It's so important for you to have people locally that get it, that really get it. I mean, that's why the podcast is called Purpose and Realities, because that's what we get into. So, okay, let's dive into then the building local. Like, why does that matter? Why not just be like all these other influencers, rent a nice Lambo, put it behind you, right? Take the selfie. Like, why are you choosing to build locally and building in the way that you are?
Mm-hmm. A couple key reasons, right? Number one, no one's doing it. And if you look at where the world's headed, everything's trying to push towards like online and metaverse and all this stuff, where if you look at what that is creating already, right? Where I know we were just looking at some stuff this week about like they're calling it the loneliness epidemic, where people are like going crazy, for lack of a better word, because they don't have real intimate relationships and friendships.
Yeah.
And with this push towards online, not saying that like online's like evil, right? But like we're human beings. We're meant to get together in person. We're meant to build communities and friendships and partnerships and all that stuff in person. And why that's so important is because as technology and everything speeds up more and more, we're already kind of on the brink of losing that human touch. You look around day to day, like go out right now and see how many people are staring down at their phones. Look at right now how many parents are just giving their kids a phone to,
that's crazy. Like, yeah, when you go out to eat, you just it's like the next level of a pacifier.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, just watch your shows. What's that doing to that
Yeah.
kid?
Yeah, seriously. And so like personally now, like I go to 2 to 4 events a week, 1 to 2 like bigger conferences a quarter. I've really embraced that, and I've been doing that for years now. And so
What are some of the ones that you go to, just so people can get a taste of the kind of groups that you're in?
for sure. So locally here, I mean, there's a ton in terms of like networking. I do a lot in terms of education and technology, because that's kind of the work I'm doing as well as like politics. But nationally, or like bigger conferences, the Vault 2020, or the Vault overall, great conference.
Yeah, Patrick by David and Valuetainment.
Yeah, he's a G. Shout out to them. What are some other ones?
You got the door-to-door convention.
Yeah.
Pedro's building an army of door-to-door too. So
Yeah.
there's a lot that we'll get into, because
Exactly.
yeah, everyone's like, oh, just go online, right? Run Facebook ads. It's like, how about show up on someone's door?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So all right. I mean, there's a lot that I want to get into. I did my research on Pedro, so now I know who Pedro really is, right? But let's just talk a little bit about, I mean, how about let's just get the elephant in the room, is like the purpose, man. Like, what do you really see that you're born to do? What is the purpose you've given yourself?
Yeah. So funny, man. Purpose is so funny, because growing up, or even, I mean, to this day, you hear so much about like, oh, you have to find your purpose. It's like, just let it come to you or whatever, all this stuff. But really, you decide your purpose. You decide, this is what I'm here to do. We have one life, right? And really getting into it, it's like, as I mentioned before, all these problems in the world, whether it's corruption, whether it's poverty, like, I mean, there's a statistic, 20,000 kids die every single day from preventable causes. Who's even talking about that? It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so if your purpose is not here to create a world where that does not exist, if your purpose is not to create the absolute best world possible, what are you doing? Like, honestly, everyone talks about purpose and impact and making a difference, which, like, I mean, I understand, because that I was there as well. Like, I've had many different sales jobs, and like one, for instance, was with the painting company, or like selling painting services, right? And the motto was like, oh, we're making a difference, we're helping homeowners improve their home and all
doing
this
people
stuff.
jobs.
Yeah, but it's like, all right, really, you look at that and you look at where the world is at currently and where it's headed. Like, there's bigger things that we need to sort out ASAP. And it's going to take a large movement. And I mean, we're working on that already, where we have a huge network of people who are very like-minded, who see the state of the world, who are working on bigger impact projects, and are actually making things happen in terms of change. So yeah,
I'd say one of the things that's very unique about what both of us work on with education is just, when you look at these problems in the world, it's like, sure, let's say hunger is a huge issue, right? We can all agree on that. And yeah, you can feed somebody. You could even create a system so that everyone's got meals. Great. What if they're still emotionally unstable? They are worried about I don't know, their government abusing them, or they're worried about a war happening. So it's like, a lot of this stuff it's good, but it's kind of band-aids. Again, not to belittle people who are feeding people, that's great, but as we've seen, the real root of the issue is education. I mean, we were talking about the reading rates. Remember when we were at that expo?
Oh, yeah.
Tell everyone a little bit about the reading rates, and like, why does that matter?
For sure. Before I dive into that, though, that's a great point. There's so much band-aid solutions, where it's like, yes, we need boots on the ground. We need people, like feeding people, building homes, all this stuff. But you have to ask yourself, why is that person even in that position in the first place? How, like, charities have been around for, like, I don't even know, like probably 50, 100 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, the goal, what is the purpose of a charity? Is it to, like, fundamentally help people?
PR.
Right. If so, like, Like, yes, there obviously change and, differences are made, but it's Band-Aid solutions. You have to zoom out and you have to look at the bigger picture, the bigger system that's even creating that in the first place. So that's the type of stuff that, I know we're working on and we talk about. But yeah, going back to your question about the education and literacy rates, it's crazy. There's probably one of the leaders in this field is it's an organization called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP for short. And I was actually just looking at this today. In Minnesota, 70% of students are not proficient in reading and math. That was 8th grade students that was data from 2022.
Yo,
that's insane.
That is
and literally
disturbing.
Yeah, and it's people would be like, oh yeah, these last 2 years have been crazy, but it's going to rebound. The literacy, like proficiency and literacy rates have been in decline in Minnesota specifically since 2017. And if you look at, like, if you extrapolate that and look at the nation, it's not much better. In fact, it's worse.
And for people who may not be aware of this and the implications, like, what does that mean? Why should the average person listening to this? I mean, I know it's not an average person who's even going to listen to this podcast, but even in general, I know it's a lot of like people into self-development and all that. Why should they care about that?
I mean, you look at it, right? The next generation is so important because they're the future leaders, the future politicians, the future business owners. They are the future. And so we have a very urgent problem right now. We're in an extraordinary problem where we have this generation of kids who are severely developmentally behind. Like, that's all the research is showing us that. And you have that, and that's on one hand, right? And then you have on the other hand this world that is if you seen much on like AI, automation, just technology as a whole, it's advancing faster than ever. I know we were just watching something where it's like AI is doubling at an double exponential curve.
Yeah.
Like, have you even heard of that before?
Double exponential. Yeah,
like, that's crazy, right? So,
or the Goldman Sachs, they just came out with what was it? It was like a report that their analysts did. And I mean, Goldman Sachs is one of the biggest banks in the world. They got money to throw around. And they came out that in the next 10 years, their predictions for how many jobs are going to be lost to AI, not replaced. And now you got a new job over here. No, it's how many jobs will be gone. And for the listeners, just guess. Just come up with your guess in your mind how much you think it is, okay? And it's 300 million jobs are going to be lost to AI. That's the population of the United States. Good thing 30% of our students can read at it. We're fine. Let's just keep, focusing on bullshit.
And those aren't just like factory manual labor jobs. Those are sales professionals. Those are IT and software development. Those are like in healthcare, like traditional safe jobs, or jobs that have been like, you're past automation. You won't get automated. Like those are those jobs.
I'm a doctor.
Right.
Wow.
So
yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah. It's really wild. Also talk a little bit as well. We do a lot in education. And again, if you're not in education, we have so much programming around education being like boring because it was so painful as a kid. I mean, remember going to school?
Oh yeah.
You did not want to be there. You're just like there was nothing really good about it. I mean, some people like sports or their friends or whatever, but in general, we have a lot of pain associated to education. But let's just talk a little bit more about the school to prison pipeline. I know we speak about that as well, because if you want to see the world just be a better place in general, there's some pretty alarming stats and things to be aware of so that we can work on solutions. Yeah. What is that?
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of research on this, right? But if a lot of prisons in the US are private, right? Meaning they're like for-profit businesses. And what they'll do to determine how many prisons they need to build, because obviously you can't just put a prison up in a day. It takes time, it takes money, it takes resources. They'll look at the 4th grade literacy levels from schools, and they'll determine, okay, the kids who are not reading proficient, they'll project that data on to how many prisons they need to build.
Yeah.
It's that accurate of a predictor.
Yes. Yeah. Out of anything that they could use to predict, that's what they choose. And so, I mean, that's just so fundamental. It's like the ability to read. I mean, it's insane how many millions of adults in America can't even read basic directions on Google Maps. Like I could find the quote. Dr. Phil was on Joe Rogan, and it's an atrocious amount of adults can't even read that, or like the directions on the back of a pill bottle. Like basic literacy, like a huge percent of our population is illiterate, which then makes sense. Now let's get into this. Wouldn't that make sense? Why now in politics, whoever can make more noise and get emotionally manipulate the masses gets the attention.
Exactly.
What was your take on? Okay. One day, who was it? Was it Seth was the first one who found out about Neil Sean? One day, one of the guys that we work with, he came over and he's like, "Oh, you got to hear about this new guy. He's running for governor, and like he could basically be independent, but he's more just like based on the Constitution. But you would like this guy." And then we went to some of the events, and next thing you know, it was like we were witnessing how to put forward a politician. He's like a family man. He's a doctor. He was not at all a politician. It's like an entrepreneur. And he goes, yeah, I really want a better world for my kids. I'm going to step up into politics. And we saw him go from pretty small to like going to the full on statewide convention. Yep. And we even got like, we're basically like, look, this matters now more than ever. I mean, here in the Twin Cities where we live, they were starting to pass mandates. So like you had to have the jab in order to go to a restaurant. And you're just seeing more and more of these, let's say, rights that we have as citizens, we're starting to get infringed upon. And we won't have to get into the politics of all that here, but we started to get more involved because we want to see, hey, in the next 50 years, what do we have to be prepared for? Because it seems like politics has turned into this even more of a circus than it's ever been before, right? And so what was your experience of that from like the first time we went to Freedom Club? Remember that? Yep. And then seeing that evolve, like, how was that experience for you?
It's interesting for sure. Because I definitely, there's like this lure and attraction of politics where it's like very high energy, because it's like, a lot of people are passionate, both sides, whatever. They're very passionate about their beliefs and, passionate about what they want to see. Right.
There's this convention. Well, we'll get into it in a minute, but oh my God, I've never seen Jessica quite so angry. Jessica's my wife. Right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't know?
Yeah. So it's like, there's this lure and it's like, oh, in politics, you can make a difference. And like, that's kind of like what's put out. And yes and no, it has to be in a very specific way, as we saw firsthand. It's kind of how the political landscape has changed today is pretty crazy, where the average person can't win. The average entrepreneur, the average family man, they cannot win. You know how much money it takes to run a successful campaign? I mean, you just look at the numbers and the data from the last presidential election, and so, yeah, I can see how people get very drawn into that. And again, it's not to say that politics is all bad, right? Because it's important. And that's why we're planning on like really stepping up into that. And we're already building the foundation for that, because that's where the laws of society are run, right? So if you want to change the system, you have to change the laws and the language of how things operate. And so, it's important, but also it's almost like a shiny object.
Yeah. We saw that firsthand. And there was two moments that really stood out to me. There's one guy, I won't mention his name, but he's, awesome guy, fundraiser, very successful entrepreneur. And he lives kind of close to us in one of the cities around here. He has this beautiful home, art on the walls. I think it's like $5 million worth of art, right?
Yeah.
Just amazing. He takes you on a house tour and everything. And we went there for a couple different like fundraisers and just ways to meet people. Like, out of any of the parties or anything, I just classify myself as independent. I'm pro common sense and whatever can allow us to have, freedom and responsibility to pass that on to our kids. And, there was different politicians that we resonated more with. And we'd go to his home, and just to see how you would get all these people in the room and someone would deliver this rousing speech and everything. And it was like in the back of the minds of everyone there, though, there was this just hope. It was like this weird empty hope that you could hear where they didn't actually trust that they could even get their person in, because the current machine is so strong, especially here in the Twin Cities where we live. And that was really fascinating to me, because out of all the, let's say, powerful people that we met from the different groups, like, I mean, they had, I would say, a lot of leverage, and they knew people in the media and everything. And it's like, you just saw how they didn't know anything better. It was like, hey, we're going to do this, but you could just tell there was like this inner conflict that they had. Did you feel that too?
Oh yeah. It's like, yeah, I mean, you said it very well. Like, it's like people, like, it's almost like blind faith. It's like, okay, like, I'm told that you can make a difference in politics. I'm told that this is what we should do, but nothing's changing. It's like the world that we have is still very messed up, and things are, not improving.
Yeah.
Either side, right?
Yeah, either side, because it's like this weird false dichotomy. It's like both parties, it's kind of two heads of the same dragon, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And right now it's like the people who are the loudest on both sides get all the attention from the media, and then it's just it's very interesting, because the guy that we wanted to see win out of all of it, they had over 1 million doors knocked around the whole state, which is really awesome. Like, just to witness that, it was really cool, because again, we're big fans of door knocking and building locally. So that was cool. But the other thing that I don't think I'll ever forget this was so we got elected to go to the state convention to represent our neighborhoods. So like where Pedro lived and then where I live, there's a whole process and the bureaucracy and all that stuff. But it was really fascinating to become aware of, like, this is actually how it works in our state. So you could become aware of the vocabulary and the rules of the game. And plus you meet a lot of cool people. Like, I won't mention the name of that one group that we know, and we went to some of their events, because they're like really not liked by a lot of other groups. What did they describe their philosophy? Political action group? No. It'll come back to me, but they're very much like boots on the ground. For example, there was one person up north who was about to like let some bill pass that was actually nobody in the community wanted, and no one was even aware that it was going to pass. And it was like pretty substantial to hinder people's freedoms. And this group basically got the phone number of that politician, and then they mass distributed it. And they're like, hey, look, this politician's about to abide by this. And then they mass distributed it. So they had phone calls, boom, 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 all day long for days and days and days. And then the person finally, they had to then face the people. And so, again, that's kind of like guerrilla tactics, but to at least be aware of that, because if you can coordinate enough people together, I mean, really, the government is supposed to be a representation of the people.
Yeah, like there's a great quote. It's like, the government should be afraid of the people should not be afraid of the government.
Yes.
And we should we need to start looking at politicians as we employ them.
Yes.
Right. Because that's how it should be, but it's not how it has been, and it's not how it currently is.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the thing that I just found, like, out of all of it with the politics stuff, was we ended up getting voted in, basically Pedro and I and my wife Jessica and some other people here, where then we got to go to the state convention. So it was like a weekend, and it was just fun to be there. But like you said, the lure and the energy and the excitement and everything, and there's a lot of like weird jargon and stuff, and like, okay, all in favor say yay and nay and all this stuff. So it was cool to kind of see how they did that. They used something called Robert's Rules of Order, and to see the machine working was interesting. But then at the part where, so they're like literally deciding who is going to be, promoted as the candidate for governor. And that was like the main thing that had to be decided on. And there was maybe 5 candidates or something. Mm-hmm. And just the order of how things went, there was the guy who ended up winning it, he had special relationships in the city. so that he ended up being able to hang his banners in places that nobody else could. So I learned so much from that weekend on how it really is the network around you and who you know who can pull strings. Because then all the other candidates, people, they all line up. And then remember when everyone ran in with the signs? That was so funny.
Yeah. Man, it's a different beast. But like it just goes to like, honestly, if you ask yourself, like, how certain are you on the knowledge of how politics actually operates?
Yeah.
Right. We have like such a fundamental lack of knowledge about how basic things and things that like actually affect us in the world, like affect our day-to-day lives. We have a lack of knowledge about how those things actually operate. Politics is a great example.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, across the board, you can see that in terms of like voter turnout and everything like that. It's like everyone just shows up for the presidential election versus, all the primaries and everything, all the steps before that, which that's actually where, the change can take place.
Yeah. And it's so like, I used to hate politics. I didn't want to talk about it or anything. But then I started to realize, okay, who am I? What's the purpose I've given myself? Like, who am I going to become in the world? And what is the outcome that I want to see? I want to see a world where everyone's thriving. Like we said, like, how do we end the suffering and all of that? And I couldn't help but then address the fact that, politics is this nasty system right now. And imagine a world, though, kind of like when America was founded, it was a lot of people who were like entrepreneur types and just people that were more of the community than just a, person put in there. And man, it was so fascinating to see that whole weekend, kind of the breakdown of everything. But then what blew my mind was on the last day, man, it was some next level stuff. Got the candidate elected, and then after that, then they tell everyone, okay, turn your clickers in, because it was like you did this clicking thing to vote, and it's kind of irrelevant. But then after they had everyone turn their voting stuff in, then they opened it back up to start voting on all this other stuff for the party. And in front of our eyes, we're like, we are literally witnessing the demise of this party right now. I mean, that's at least what I was saying with Jessica. I'm like, that it was like they knew the game, and they knew that the average person didn't come there for anything more than just, hey, this is who we want to be governor. And after that moment happened, then they opened it back up, and then they passed all these different things and like totally changed I don't know if it's the constitution of the party or whatever. But in that moment, I saw, and I was talking to people when we were leaving it. It's like, I'm not going to read the newspaper headline the day after or whatever all the, bystanders are saying. It was like, I would find real people in there, people who had kids, people who were like, you could just tell they wanted to be there because they're like, yeah, I want to make sure that the world's a better place. I want to make sure that our community is a better place. And they just seemed so defeated afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. Just on like who was there, because a lot of them, it was over probably 70-80%. It was their first time ever even being involved in politics.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's huge.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, it's kind of back to what you were saying, like just the execution of that, where, I mean, think about it. It was a whole weekend, like convention. The last day, everyone's tired, hungry, hearing all these, debates, and
you went like 5 rounds of voting or whatever. Yeah, that was one of the more dramatic things I've ever been part of. Man, yeah. I thought there were going to be fights starting. It was getting really intense.
And yeah, and I just got to kind of tie it back into literacy, to change it in a little different direction. But it's like, you ever hear the phrase, or you ever hear how politicians and like public speakers have to literally lower like the vocabulary and the level that they speak to like a 4th grade level, because that's how the average person processes information.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? But you look at the results of that and what that creates. It's like, these it's funny, like we fall for it every single time. These politicians talk about hope and they talk about fear, and they just ignite that in their brand and everything, their messaging across everywhere. And people get so sucked into that because they can't actually process, they're just literally being manipulated into voting for certain things and, agreeing with certain messaging, where it's like, that's the effect of not having an educated population. And there's been like research and stuff with this about like the level of education that you need to have a like thriving republic and democracy, like you need people to be educated.
Yes.
Because you need the citizens to be able to look at different laws and know how things actually function and like have a you know, a civic outlet versus just being, for lack of a better word, just like sheep and just like following the whatever the latest politician's saying. That's, you know, yeah, it's crazy. It's like the same politician that created the problem is trying to sell you on why they should be the one to solve it. You know, it's a whole game, but you know, we're here to really change that.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's like there's so much political commentary on just complaining about the problems. But imagine this. Imagine this level of conversation just being normal. And imagine for yourself, whoever's listening, like all the people around you that you would consider to be a great either entrepreneur, you know, parent, just a good solid person who has like baseline common sense and, you know, has that intention of serving. And imagine then 10,000 people like that are all now in politics. So instead of our perception of a politician as, oh, that guy just a good smooth talker or they just dress well or whatever, it's like, no, that person's actually there and the average person can comprehend it. And the average person knows enough of the rules. Or else what are we going to do? And a lot of people don't see this too. We have to touch on this, is where the world is headed in terms of if we don't step up now. I know this is just a podcast. One podcast may or may not change someone's life, but to push the point even more is like, if we're not careful, what do you see with like Great Reset, World Economic Forum, all of that? Mm-hmm. That push is coming in. It's like a slow creep, but it's here. It's like if you knew you had cancer, but you're like, the doctor's like, it's only growing at like 2% a year. Mm-hmm. You'd be like, oh, okay, back to Netflix. Or do you be like, okay, let's get this removed and let's create a plan? How do you see that?
I mean, it's pretty wild, right? Like there's talks about, you know, from the Federal Reserve and from the government about introducing central bank digital currency this June, this July, right? So it's like this stuff is on our doorsteps. Yes. And if you don't, I would look into that if you haven't heard that concept before. I would look into some of the stuff that we're saying if you haven't really, you know, seen much on that, because where the world is headed is very just not good, right? On top of all the problems and stuff we already talked about. But yeah, like it is like this slow creep. And if you look at it, I mean, we've seen this these last couple of years, especially where, you know, it's if you want to call it the people in power, right? The people in charge, the elite, if you want to call it that, it's like slowly just pushing, and then take a couple steps back, and then just driving everything forward, where it's, you know, you wake up a year, 2 years, 3 years later, and you're like, how did we get here? How did we get here from, you know, where we were?
Yeah, there's a quote that I love. I want to see a world where we don't even need to use this quote, but it's the freedoms you surrender today are the ones your grandchildren will never know existed. So think about that. If you give up your freedoms, let's say, you know, your ability to just I don't know, go someplace and not have to take some jab or whatever. And if you give that up now and you say, nope, whatever you say, yes, I will trust the authorities, even though it's kind of contradictory. But sure, we'll do that. What happens when you have kids and then they have kids? It's like, it's just going to be expected. Like, of course, that's how we do things, you know, but what happens when they start impeding on like free speech, you know, or they start banning certain books? So, you know, again, not to be like a doom and gloom type person. I really despise that type of narrative, but it's also, again, it's like, we got to be aware of the facts of what's going on and be able to have, you know, civil, reasonable conversations about it that are solution oriented, not like Tucker Carlson or, you know, whoever the CNN guy is. It's like we have enough of the complaining, right? We're here on solutions. So I want to switch gears for a bit here.
Let's do it. We just went in on the.
Yeah, I mean, that again, that's the stuff where like you see all the influencers nowadays, they're like, oh yeah, just make money online. It's like, what happens if everyone just did that, and then all of a sudden it's central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
I'm a millionaire, but you have to spend all your money this month.
Right, exactly. Like, look into that stuff. It's crazy.
Programmable money. It's really gnarly, and they're pushing it. But they understand the long game. We understand the long game too, though.
I was gonna say something before we switch directions, but but it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I wrote down a quote that so if you're not following Pedro, I'll include links to his stuff on his Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that. Definitely befriend him. Okay, you had a quote. Do you know what giving 100%? It was your post you made about going all out. Okay. Do you know what giving 100% looks like? And then you're talking about doing that for an entire year.
Yep.
Tell us about
This. Actually ties in perfect. I just remember what I was gonna say.
Oh, great.
Really look at like, what do you stand for? What do you stand for in life? Because how things currently are, everyone can see the problems, everyone talks about the problems, but no one's actually stepping up, taking responsibility to solve those problems. And it's a part of it is because just the system that we live in, people are so focused on their own survival that they can't even think beyond just surviving. So it makes it very difficult to care that 20,000 kids die every day from preventable causes when you can't feed your own family. And so, like, really look at, like, what do you stand for? You have one life. We're only here once, as far as I know, right? Like, again, back to purpose. What is your purpose? What do you stand for? What will you do? A lot of people, especially people who are watching this, don't just want to work the 9-to-5 work job they hate for 50 years, retire when they're 60, and go travel with a cane and live life like that. You're here to do more. You have a calling, and the calling is to solve a lot of these problems, get things sorted out first and foremost, and then we can really start focusing on, like, wow, like, let's actually create amazing stuff. But back to that quote, right? Do you know what giving 100% looks like in your life? It's a great question, because, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about, but we've accepted so much just mediocrity, and just averageness. And many people, I'd say the vast majority of people, don't even know what going, like, all out looks like in their life, whether it's even a day, right? Like, imagine if you're a business owner. It's like you have the work in the business, exactly what needs to be done, and executing that and working at a high level, like going all out, whatever that looks like, because it looks a little bit different for everybody, but like really putting that work in, doing that for a day, like, oh man, I need a rest, right? Like, that was exhausting. Imagine doing that for a week. Imagine doing that for a month, then a quarter, and then a year, and then 5 years, 10 years, because, like, that's really what it takes. And we live in a world where just such mediocrity and weakness is just accepted, where literally, if you were like, okay, I'm going all out for the next year, you would make significant progress on the goals that you have in life. Like, no, it's just common sense, right? Like, I'm not speaking some like crazy language or something, but it's like, go all out, like, really test yourself. Because say you do that for a year and you're like, wow, like, that was intense. Guess what? You can always dial it back a bit and make it more sustainable. But if you're here to really make a difference, if you're here to really do big things, kind of like what I was saying in that video, like, we're here to build billion-dollar companies. We're here to become billionaires, not just to be a billionaire or whatever, but who you have to become in that process and the level of impact that you can make, right? Like, we're here to do big things. That takes a lot. It's not just going to be given to you. So to really, really embody that, like, if you look at like any of these companies, Microsoft, Amazon, like Amazon on the books didn't even make a profit for like the first 5-10 years they were in business. And if you read like the autobiographies or the biographies on Jeff Bezos, I would highly recommend do that, because it paints a very good window of just what it takes to get to that level. Because it's, again, it's, you know, it takes a lot. But what is the alternative? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you'll have the compound effect happen, the compound interest either way.
Mm.
You know, if you just settle, or you're like, yeah, I'm trying to do the 4-hour work week. It's like, man, I see why that book sold so much. Tim Ferriss doesn't work 4 hours a week. He works all the time. It's like, it's a good idea, quote unquote. It's not even a good idea, but it's like, I see why it sells. It's like, get rich with minimal effort. But when you love what you do, it's like, you'll go all out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's, again, nothing new, right? When you love what you do, you'll like for me, literally there's no off. This is what I'm here to do. I'm clear on the purpose. Even when I'm resting, I'm still working on the business. You know, I'm still working on everything that we're doing. Like right now, you could call this, I mean, we're working, right? But we're about to have like a awesome dinner, probably play some games, play some Catan, you know, go ham.
So
but
it's brought to you by
right. Next level. But it's like even when you're having fun, it's like everything that you're thinking about unconsciously, subconsciously, like in the background, it's like that's going, and you're working things out. Like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they would play cribbage. They're very well known for that, like all the time, because a funny thing happens. You know, you can get so focused on what you're doing and the result you're trying to create. When you take a step back from that, you kind of let your mind do the work, and you'll come up with a bunch of new ideas.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Okay. So there was the other week, we did the retreat, right, with some of the other sales guys that we work with. And like we support a lot of people. I mean, we go like we're literally front lines building basically the Amazon of education. I mean, the Amazon in terms of how massive it is, but not like the cheap, like, you know, the whole weird game that Bezos is playing.
Yep.
But in terms of the Amazon, it's why Bezos called it Amazon, because it's the largest river on planet Earth. In the same way, that's what we're doing with education. And it takes a lot. And yeah, when you go 100% day after day after day after day, sometimes you can get stuck, right? And we can talk about that too in a moment, about what happens when you plateau. I think people would benefit a lot from that. But the other week we had a retreat here. So we had a bunch of guys from the team come out, and we hosted everyone. I know that in-person component and being able to be surrounded specifically by guys who hold you to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Talk about that and help people see the value of that, and just some takeaways you had.
Yeah. Invaluable. You know, famous saying, right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Very true. But it's like, if you surround yourself with the right people, iron sharpens iron. And I have a perfect story to illustrate this, right? So at this, one of the things we did here was like a ice plunge, cold plunge, right? And it's so funny, man, because like I've done ice plunges, cold plunges before. Max at that point was like 3 minutes. Right, 3 minutes. It's like snowing outside. It's like January.
Yeah, like it's literally so cold. You have to like hit it with a shovel and stir it and like pour some hot water just to melt the top. Yeah.
So 3 minutes in that, right? And you know, we're out here. You know, we're here to level up. That's the other really cool thing. It's like everyone was here at that retreat to really take their life, their business, their purpose, relationships, everything to the next level. And obviously you have to challenge what you're currently accepting in order to get to that next level. And you have to kind of, you know, it's like you can really create like an awesome environment and the exact things you need to take that on, right? One thing we did was an ice plunge. And again, the most I've done at this point was 3 minutes. But one of the guys goes first, right? And he's sitting there. It's like 2 minutes. I'm like, all right, he's getting out soon. 3 minutes. Like, okay, this is
Who's it, Sam?
Yeah, Sam went first, right?
Shout out Sam.
And he's sitting there, and I'm like, damn, this dude's unfazed. He ends up going for 6 minutes. I'm like, wow, like that's like double what I've done already. That's crazy. The next guy goes, I think it's Ali.
Yeah,
Ali goes next, right? He's sitting there 5 minutes, 6 minutes. I'm like, okay, probably gonna stop close to Sam. He goes like 7, 8 minutes. I'm like, okay, cool. That's still a lot, right? Now I gotta be 8 minutes, right? Because that's part of the brilliance of it. It's like iron sharpens iron. We make each other better. Next guy's up, John. John goes in. John's on some next level. I don't know what he's like possessed, right? And he gets in 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes. I'm like, okay. Like, I guess I'm granted, I'm out here standing without a shirt, doing push-ups, like getting myself hyped to take this on. And literally he's like, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving he's in the cold blood, right? He's like, I'm gonna die in here. Right? I'm like, okay, this guy's not playing. He ends up making it to like 14 minutes, something like that, which is
do really not try awesome. This at home.
Yeah, but he's like, all right. And we're all super competitive. So I'm like, okay, I'm here to level up. I'm here to push myself. I know I can do it. And a big theme from that weekend is really focusing on the outcome. Like, focused on the result that you want to have happen and have that being your laser focus. And I get in, 3 minutes up. I'm like, all right, 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 11 minutes, the whole time, just like focusing on the result that I want, which is more like 14 minutes and more. And end up going like with like 15 minutes, something like that. But it just goes to show like how being surrounded by the right people will push you in ways that you did not think possible. And we could talk about the other stuff that we did, which is like really next level.
Yeah.
But that was just a really good story to illustrate that point.
Yeah, I mean, after that event too, I had people message me their top takeaways, and I was looking at that before we did this because I was like, there's some really good shit in there. Like, it was stuff that I didn't even plan. Like, I knew enough of kind of what we were going to do, but that's also part of the benefit of having a group and cultivating that community is you set up a basic structure to it. Like, hey, Friday we'll do this, Saturday we'll do this, Sunday, we'll kind of see what happens. And then because you're surrounded by the right people, they then bring a whole new element to it. And I love that. I mean, whether it's the clubhouses or the events we do, there's always like, you have a plan and you make it good, but then everyone there all comes together and it's like this mastermind effect happens. But let me pull this up here. There's a couple of these that I know people get a lot out of. Should we talk about the fact that Pedro did over 1,000 push-ups in a day, actually in under 2 hours? No, not yet. Let's go into some of these though.
Yeah.
Okay. One is the idea of always more to give. What does that mean, especially for someone listening to this?
Yeah, man, I, even now, like I love that concept. Like, there's always more to give in all aspects of life, right? Whether you're in the gym, you're working out, it's like you can do more. Push yourself to that max. Whether you're in business and you're serving somebody, like a client or something, it's like there's always more value to give. There's always more I can do. In a like a partnership, in a relationship, it's like there's always more I can give, but really focused on that giving aspect. In business, in life, like there's so much power in that. In giving, like truly giving without any expectation in return, giving to give, right? Giving with no strings attached, nothing like that. There's so much power in that, because whether, like, time and time again, I've seen whether directly or indirectly, it will come back. Like, I've connected people who've done business and then a year, 2 years later, they'll hit me up for something. And even if it doesn't, but it's just like just giving, just adding value. And there's always more of that. You can always do more. You can always push yourself more. There's always more to give. So.
Well said. That ties into another takeaway as well, is like a man must give in order to receive, and a woman must receive in order to give. I know some people will be up in arms about that, But it's like really, you will see a whole different side of a man and a woman when that's put in place. Do you have anything to say on that?
I mean, it's so funny, man. It's so funny because you see like the red pill guys, or all these guys on like dating and whatever, and it's like it's like we've gotten so far from what relationships should be.
Wow.
On
Well
both
said.
sides, whether it's red pill or whatever, whether it's just whatever, however relationships are set up these days, and it's like we've gotten so far from what actual relationships should be, which I know you go extensively on that topic, and you're kind of that example. You and Jess are that example of like, okay, we have this thing called a relationship agreement. Like we're basing our relationship on principles, on things that we will hold each other accountable to, not just like this feeling of love and the honeymoon phase, even though there is love and there is emotion and there is
and it's actually sustained that way. That's how you sustain the honeymoon phase for the rest of your life. Just like a little tweak at the beginning. So yeah, there's a couple more in here that are really good. Infinite Game, Steadfast.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, Infinite Game. This actually, now that you say that, kind of ties into Always More to Give. But if you haven't heard the concept of Infinite Game, a guy named Simon Sinek, he did a pretty cool TED talk on it. The basic concept is this: there's a finite game, which means like imagine a basketball game or a football game. Like there's set rules, there's set amount of points, there's a clear start, a clear end, a clear winner, a clear loser. And at the end of an hour or whatever, like there will be a winner and loser. So that would be a finite game. Infinite Game is a game where there are no rules. The players are not clearly identified. There's not a clear start and clear stop. And a good example of this is like business, right? Where it's like the goal of business is to stay in business and keep playing the game of business. It's not to quote unquote win, right? Because how are you measuring that? Is your competition playing the same game you are? If they're not, it's not you can't have a finite game. So really focusing on that, and like we're here for the long haul, right? I mean, everything that we're doing, it's like we're playing an infinite game. Life is an infinite game, So yeah, and being steadfast in that.
Yeah, we run into issues when we apply the finite mindset. It's like, oh, once I get to 50K a month, then I'm gonna be happy, or then I'll be set. It's like that's the moment you actually screw yourself over. It's like, sure, you can have goals along the way, and you need to have goals along the way, obviously. But then it's like you're in the game because you're like, I am going to be the very best entrepreneur I can be. I'm going to be the very best human being I can be. And the ultimate infinite game really is the purpose that we have. Ending suffering on planet Earth. And guess what? Once we get that number of 20,000 kids a day dying to 0 or whatever, then there's another game. It's not, okay, great, now we get to go on vacation. It's like, sure, we'll go on vacation along the way. Yeah. But it's then, okay, now how do we keep that in place? How do we now prevent future consequences from happening? So yeah, there's a couple more in here. Yeah. Certainty muscle, and just certainty in general. How has that I mean, ever since I met you, you've always been certain in yourself. And it's just been really cool to see it expand because, like you said, iron sharpens iron. I remember many times so we run a meetup here. We call it our clubhouse. And it's like a self-development group. And we'll get anywhere from, on some of the smaller days, especially at the beginnings, when we're like 8 to 10 people. And we've had times where we've had over 50 people there. We even got a strongly worded email from getting kicked out of your office. We had everyone on the roof that one time. Yeah. But I've seen Pedro. It's like we'll have like last minute, someone will invite a bunch of people, or there'll be like some curveball thrown. And every single time that I'm like, hey, like you got this, right? And you're, of course. And it's so cool. And so tell us about that with that certainty and how you keep expanding that.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple different aspects, right? One is the idea that you just make the decision to be certain. You just make the decision. Like this is because if you look at the root of the word decision, the root of the word decision means to cut off. Like there's no other alternative. This is what I'm outcome focused, right? This is what's going to happen. No matter what, this is going to happen. And so you look at a lot of like very high level entrepreneurs, CEOs, visionaries, people describe them having this effect where they would make a decision and the universe would almost bend to their will. And not to be all woo woo, but it's like when you're very clear on what you want, you come up with ideas and new strategies and things that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. When you don't entertain any other outcome. And an example of this is like, say you make the decision, right, to go to the gym. You're like, I'm going to the gym 5 days a week. I'm getting that work in, right? And then Monday shows up and you're like, I don't really feel like it. I gotta get new gym clothes. I gotta drive to the gym. It's like in that moment, that's doubt. And you're entertaining other ideas and other outcomes besides you going to the gym and getting that work in. So being certain is you don't entertain that and you just make the decision, this is what will happen. And there's a lot of power in that. Like the success is literally a decision away. And then in terms of the other aspect of it is looking at more like the principle of self-trust, where self-trust is like not rocket science, being able to trust yourself, right? Saying that when you're going to do something, it's as if it's already happened and other people can count on you like that because you follow through on what you say you're going to do. Your words align with your actions and your thoughts.
Well said. And that has that compound effect too.
100%.
There's one more here, and I think this will tie into the Misogi, is talked about just like realizing that building business doesn't have to be hard, but it can be like perfectly hard, like the push-ups. Tell us, Pedro. Tell us a story.
Yeah. Let's start time. So, all right, again, take you back. We're here at this retreat. Everyone's here to level up. Everyone's here is running businesses, like building communities, like doing very like high level stuff, working on some high impact type of things. And we're all here to go to that next level. And so part of this was Saturday morning, 6 a.m. We all wake up. We kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. Me and Mitch schemed a bit on this beforehand. So we kind of engineered it, right? So even for myself, like I knew a little bit about what was going to happen, but we walk out at Mitch's place. He has a pretty baller place, like $1 million homestead. He has like a couple, what do you call it? Like a stable, couple stables.
Yeah, like outbuildings.
Outbuildings. Head into there, carrying like a workout mat, right? We're walking through the snow, cold as hell. It's 6 a.m. You know, we're tired. We stayed up late the night before. And we're like, all right, we're going to put this to the test. And if you haven't heard of the concept of a Misogi is, I believe it's from Japanese culture, but it's kind of taken on a modern twist where it's like a task or like something that you do that when you think about it, you are like, I don't know if I can actually do that. You know, like that's really going to push me. And like there's a like 50% chance that you can actually do it. But being able to push yourself in that way, right? So like, for instance, say you don't run like marathons right now, making the decision that you're going to run a marathon within a month. It's like, I don't know about that, right? So basically we're out in this stable. All right, we're here to level up. Like, let's do it. And so we put the mats down and Mitch is like, all right, for the next hour, we are going to do, he's like, pick a number of push-ups that you're going to do every minute for the next hour. And so some guys did like 7 push-ups, some did 8, some did 9. I think I did 10. Yeah, I did 10. So 10 push-ups every minute for the next 60 minutes. Right? So what? 600 push-ups.
Mhm.
And like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. So we get hype, we're all yelling and going ham. We're like, all right, let's do this. And we
Especially
start,
when you got John in the room.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so starts the timer, play some hype music, and we get to it, right? So every minute, on the minute, 10 push-ups. Like, okay, you get to minute 40, minute 50, your arms start burning a bit. You're like, like, okay, like I see this, but you still have like a decent amount of rest time, but it still pushes you, it still challenges you. And so going through this, you're like, okay, like I can do this, you're getting hyped, but you're feeling it for sure. You're definitely feeling it. And we get to the end, we're getting closer, right? It's like minute 58, do the 10, minute 59, do the 10, 60 minutes, do the 10, let's go. We're all hyped, we're all celebrating, like we did it. We're all just like very elated. And Mitch is like, okay, like that was cool, that was fun, we had a great time. But hey, in business and life, you're gonna reach that goal and you're gonna think things are going amazing. And then guess what? Curveball happens. Something else comes up. And so for the next hour, we're gonna do the same damn thing. The same damn thing. And again, you're feeling it at this point. So you're like, fuck, like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And again, the whole premise is like outcome focused. What is the result that you want? What are you giving your energy to? Are you giving your energy to the fact that your muscles hurt and you're sore? Or are you giving energy to the fact that I like we were saying, like, I love the burn, like literally kind of like putting yourself in a trance to complete this task. And we start again, 10 push-ups every minute. And then I don't know who started it. Someone started doing crunches like minute 5, or sit-ups.
Oh yeah, one of us, because we got an event in San Diego, so we're like, you gotta have a 6-pack by the event. Okay, we're doing something.
Like, all right, I'm not just gonna let him do sit-ups and I'm not gonna do sit-ups. Like, what is this? And so then started doing 10 push-ups and 10 sit-ups. And bro, like minute 30, like literally do the 10 push-ups and then do the 10 sit-ups. And for me, I had like 5 seconds max of rest in between going into the next 10 push-ups. And again, minute 30, I'm like, damn, like I'm feeling it, right? But again, outcome focused. And so we continue, get to 40, get to 50. And you're at this point, you're like barely going up, but you're going ham. And minute 60, we reach it, and we're like hell yeah. At this point, for me, I was like unstoppable at this point. Absolutely unstoppable. I did a few more after the minute just to prove myself that there's always more to give, right? And then we're like, okay, we did that. Like, we're tired as like shirt, pants just drenched, right? It smells terrible in there. And we're like, okay. And everyone's super tired but very happy at the same time. Like, okay, let's keep going, right? And so the night before, this blizzard came in, like literally 3-4 feet of snow. Mitch lives a little more rural, so there's not like plows, and it's not like in the city. And we're like, okay. So literally there's this 2-mile stretch that initially it's down a hill, and then the mile back is up a hill. And we're like, let's go. And so we like take charge. We're running. There's video of this, right? And literally there's like feet of snow, like multiple feet of snow. Multiple feet, I don't know. But so it's hard to run, but we just keep going, outcome focused again. And we finally get back, we're up the hill, everyone's like super tired, legs just burning, arms burn, everything's burning, you're hurt. But we get to the top and we just like take a moment, right? We're like, damn, like I literally just did 1,200 push-ups, 600 sit-ups in 2 hours, and went on a 2-mile run downhill and then uphill.
In a blizzard. Without a shirt.
Without a shirt. That's a very true, right? And we all just kind of like took a moment, or like, damn, like I am unstoppable. And so that's the whole concept of Misogi, but that's also the power of getting together with like-minded people who are on that same wavelength of like, I'm here to really push myself physically and mentally, and I want to go to the next level. And yeah, like that was hands down probably one of the most like impactful things that I've ever gone through. Because it's like Mitch couldn't do the push-ups for me. None of those guys could do the push-ups for me, but I did that, and I had to push myself to do that. And everyone else was like the bar kept getting higher and higher. You know, when the sit-ups came in, you're like, okay, I guess I'm doing this now, just because I'm not gonna let this guy beat me. You know, and so it's just like it's amazing, hands down, just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well said. I mean, if you want to have people like that in your life, our communities, like certain things are exclusive, but not really. Like you can find people like me and Pedro in cities around the world through the different groups that we're part of, because this is the kind of thing that, especially for men, you need this. You need it. Like you wouldn't have gone 14 minutes if John didn't go 13 or whatever, right? And that's the power of the group right there.
Just on that point, yeah, like young men especially, like just take a look at the world right now. Just it's not a good state. A lot of people overall are just really struggling, right? With whether it's depression or whatever. But it's like being surrounded by high level like performers and high level people, and people who are like, you know, really going to push you as men. You need that challenge. Men are forged through hardship. They're forged through like challenges and obstacles, and just people overall are forged through that. You know, it really builds character. It builds self-confidence. It builds like who you are. Right.
Yeah. So, but then the other really, really important piece is there's a lot of these things out there, right? Go do a Spartan race, go, you know, do Hell Week or whatever. And people will do shit like that, or they'll go, you know, climb a mountain or do cold plunge or whatever. But then like, yeah, I'm a high performer. But then they go sell life insurance. And it's like, you're telling me your one life you have, and you're going to go, it's like, look, if you want to sell life insurance and that's part of what you do for your business, okay, I get it. But our point is then, okay, now use all of that understanding and who you've become. And now let's take that into the world where it counts the most. Where does it count the most? Education. How are we educating our peers and the next generation? And that's why we work on Technotutor together. And then how do we change the culture? That's like our friend JJ. Like he's literally getting into like A-list celebrity world. And shout out LaTanya as well. Like she's an actress and knows all these people. Where now it's like we're taking on the system at different points. That we have the politics, right? We have cutting edge parenting. I mean, we have our network of parenting and homeschooling around here. So it's like don't just stop at going, oh, I challenged myself. Yeah, I'm pumped up. Great. I'm going to do this once a year. You know, that's just another form of like mental masturbation in a sense. And I know this will challenge people because I'm sure you've been pumped up and then you go and you're like, yeah, we're selling e-com or whatever. It's like, yeah, sure. If that's part of your business, okay. If that's putting food on the table for you and your family, okay, good. But now really, who are you? Are you here just to profit off of a system of abuse? Or are you here to also change that system? Like what's your take? I mean, why do you choose to do this instead of go back and, you know, crush it with your paint door knocking thing or, you know, all the other stuff that you could do? I mean, you would literally be able to crush it in like any business. Yeah. Why do you choose this in addressing education?
Yeah. It's literally the most important thing in the world. You look at, I mean, all the problems that we mentioned, there's a lot of people who are focused on Band-Aids, like you said, focused on the symptoms. You look at it, a lack of education Lack of access to a high quality education. That is the root. That is the root cause. So that's like, why work on why work on a symptom when you can work on the root cause?
Yeah. Yeah. And by high quality education, we don't mean, oh, get them in a good private school.
Right.
At all. That's not the answer. It's fundamentally supporting kids to be able to read and understand any word that they need to know. Like one of our, maybe you could talk a moment too about your conversation with Max, but I'll just preface this. So one of the guys we work with, Cameron, and his wife, Katie, and shout out to the Copes. They're awesome role models and just really live in purpose. And their oldest son, Max, he's now 6. He's got books now that are literally like, people will have cognitive dissonance hearing this. So I'll just say it like this. They're high school level books. Okay. And the other week, Cameron posted a photo of 3 different books he got Max. And Max literally read over 1,000 pages in under 24 hours of a high school level, like fiction novel. Well, 3 of them. Over 1,000 pages in under 24 hours. I know the average person does not comprehend that, but this is what's actually possible. It's a whole different world compared to even those nice elite schools, you know, the $20,000, $30,000 a year schools. Because even there, kids are still going to run into issues. But I remember you and JJ, shout out JJ Finesser, follow him on Instagram. He's got a new album out. You and JJ had a conversation with Max for what, 2 hours?
It was crazy, man. Like we were literally just in Cam's kitchen, and Max is like eating some food. He's like playing with like something, I don't know. Like he's just telling us about like conversation that I've never had with another 5-6-year-old ever. Like a completely different level of education and level of competence. Like for instance, he was talking about how he's because he's very big into like electronics and circuits and programming stuff right now. He's telling me about how he's gonna like build this robot, like this best for all robot, he called it. But he's talking about like creating the best world as well. Like that's also education. Another great example, and before I move on, like it was crazy. Literally, we were talking for 1 to 2 hours. I felt like I was talking to a peer, not like a 5-6-year-old. You know, it was very eye-opening, very crazy. And like also Seneca, Max's sister, also a really good example of this. Like what we're doing is undeniable. It is undeniable. There's tons of like testimonies and tons of videos. Like recently, Seneca was reading a 5th grade book. The book is called Pollyanna. She's 4 years old, reading this 5th grade book for 10 to 11-year-olds with like very like perfect fluency, perfect comprehension, like reading it and actually comprehending and actually understanding. Like that is impossible by today's education standards and methods. Impossible. But you look at what that results in. People like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they didn't start reading till 7, 8, 9. Seneca's reading at this level at 4 years old. Do you think she'll ever have to worry about making money? No. Like the level that she she can do literally anything that she would aspire to do. And that's what we're creating. Systematic, like our goal is to get this into every single household. Empower every single child with this level of education. Because think about what world we'll be able to create with that, from that. Like we'll be able to do amazing things, you know? And so that's really what we're here to do.
Yeah. I mean, whatever issues you care about, whether it's you want the environment to get cleaned up, or you want to make sure that the media isn't impulsing kids with a bunch of weird stuff. It's like all of that comes back to the education and what we even think is normal for a human. Like, man, that got me so good. The first time I ever met Max, he was 3 at the time, and he had a full-on conversation. He goes, "Hi, Mitch." I'm like, "Hey." It's like, "What kind of car do you have?" Like an SUV. He goes, "What kind of gasoline does it use?" And I'm like the normal type. And I walked up to Cameron. I was like, what is this? How old is this kid? And I'm like, so he's just one of those special kids, right? Cameron's like, no, this is normal. He's not one of those genius kids or anything. This is literally engineered. He's like, you'll either see it now and you'll join us and you'll help us bring it to the world, or you're going to wait 5 years and then you'll join us. I was like, no, like I can see it. That's what's really cool too. Did we ever talk about the diffusion of innovation? Another Simon Sinek. It's not even from him, but yeah, there's like a crossing the chasm, tipping point. There's all these different books about this, right? But it's like when you're creating a change that is as widespread as what we're doing, there's the bell curve, right? There's a certain point where you have to make that leap and then it will get mainstream. It's like when they were building McDonald's or Uber or, Airbnb, where right away you have the innovators. It's like the people who saw Airbnb, right away they knew the people and they're like, oh, that sounds awesome. I want to test that out. And then you have the early adopters. And it's like, these are the people that are, they're interested in it. And they're like, yeah, this seems cool enough. I know that this is going to get big. It doesn't matter if there's not many people doing it. It makes sense to me. And then they jump in. But yeah, there's one part where it's like at 18.4%. If you can get to 18.4% of the population to get it, it then has this virality to it. It basically becomes out of control. And that's why now most people have Uber. Like most people have a smartphone, let's say, at least here in the United States. I know around the world still, it's not as common. But that's what I know both you and I saw right away with this. We're like, look, this makes sense. This is the biggest problem that's facing the world. It's like you can kind of see it. You jump in. And what's that been like for you, holding that vision, building an office, building a team of door knockers, just meeting so many people, talking to so many people, knowing not everyone's going to get it. How do you keep going and keep like building that tenacity?
Yeah, it's a really great point, because for me, like that vision always hasn't been strong, like it's kind of the same thing with certainty. It's like, you have to make that decision. Like, this is what I'm doing. And what really helped me, like make that concrete is just it's seeing it firsthand. It's undeniable. Like it literally is not it's crazy. Like it's undeniable. You see Seneca reading this book. She's 4 years old. You have this level of conversation with Max, 5-6 years old. Like what they'll be able to do in 5-10 years is I don't even think we
literally can't imagine what
exactly.
Yeah.
And so seeing that and it's like, I don't need to believe. I don't need to believe in what we're like. I don't need to believe that TechnoTutor works. I know it works. I see it firsthand. I don't need to believe what we're doing is going to blow up and be mainstream. Like I see it firsthand. And so it's just a steadfastness in that vision, in that certainty, not belief, certainty. Like I know this was going to happen because I've seen it again. Like, it's then the real task then lies in communicating that vision, so.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of cool things too, where we've used TechnoTutor very strategically, because it's basically what it's doing is it's affecting how your unconscious mind, which is way, way, way more powerful than your conscious mind, you're able to influence that. Right. And that's what media is trying to do. That's why you watch movies and you feel good when you see certain movies and you feel bad when you see certain movies. It's like you're trying to affect your unconscious all the time. But how we've then aligned that with our business and the different things we work on is so cool, right? That's what makes our community so just like elite. But it's not because we're elite. We weren't like born in the elite. It's you just have the right tools and the right people together and the right purpose, and it all comes together. But I remember that one day you're looking at getting that new apartment, and it wasn't clicking. And then you just did the TechnoTutor and the process on it. It was like, boom. Yeah. Within 12 hours, you heard back?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. It's
how do you interpret that?
I mean, you look at it, 95%, or it's more like 99%.
Yeah.
Of your thoughts, your actions, the results, the things you have in life, they're subconscious and unconscious. So it's like we spend so much time trying to like study things, like memorize things, cram things in, so focused on like the how, so to speak, right? And there's a time and place for that, but we really have to understand human psychology, human behavior, human development to like we have to understand know thyself, right? You have to understand who you are and what's really behind the scenes. You have to understand how impactful those influences from ages 0 to 7 are in your life. Those influences, the thoughts, the beliefs, the ideas, the environment, those all shape who you are and who you are till this day, right? And so yeah, it's like being able to kind of go much deeper and really work on things at that deeper level and learn things at that deeper level. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really get to see how, when you can shift at that deep of a level, how quickly things in your life open up. There's a phrase from this guy named Buckminster Fuller. He's like I don't even know, he's like an inventor. I think that's how he got famous, but he's an author too. And he's passed away now, but it's a term called a trim tab. So when you have a huge like ocean liner, like a huge barge, and you try and turn that thing around, like good luck, right? You're like going through a canal or whatever. And underneath the ship, there's a rudder. But to move that rudder takes a lot of effort because the ship is so big and it has momentum. But on the bottom of a rudder is actually a tiny rudder called a trim tab. And when you can affect that and twist it one way or the other, that's what actually gets the rudder to start moving. So that's leverage. In the simplest term, that is leverage. But the highest form of leverage is that unconscious mind changing. Because you're right, from between age 0 and 7, I mean, did you grow up with, billionaire parents and the most stable environment?
Not at all.
Just so people can hear too, like how, just a little bit about your story of like the origins, like where were you born? How did you grow up? Because what you're doing now, it seems like you've had to like engineer that for yourself.
For sure. Origin story. My dad came here from Mexico when he was young, teenager. My mom was born here. They met, without going too much into it, they ended up splitting up when I was like a year old, right? So, I mean, from the very beginning, it's like that instability was there. And just growing up more in terms of like kind of where I'm at now. I always knew there was something, like I always knew I could do something great with my life. I always knew like there's something out there. Like I always wanted to do something that helped people, right? Like whether it was, I mean, it's so funny. You go through so many like things you want to do as a kid. It's like, I want to be a ghost. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police, but like I wanted to do something impactful, something that really helped community. And growing up, that was kind of in the back of my mind. Childhood was great, but also interesting at the same time. Really, it was kind of more towards middle school, high school, where I really started seeing like, okay, like why am I the way I am? I really started looking at more like psychology and mindset and all that type of stuff. And at that point in my life, my goal was to play professional sports. So my goal was to go to the NBA. And middle school, you're watching all the highlights and mixtapes, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, like dunking on somebody. And I'm like, damn, this is sick. I'm gonna go to the NBA. But watching those types of videos on like work ethic and mindset and motivation, that really started opening the door to like the personal development world. And it's funny, like I had like this midlife, like this existential crisis in like middle and high school because like I had like low self-esteem. I didn't have confidence in myself. I didn't have confidence in like how I carried myself. And I wanted to understand that. Like I wanted to understand where that came from. Like, like I definitely blamed my parents a lot for like who I was at that point because I did not like who I was. And so I blamed them, right? And there was a lot of anger, a lot of resent, a lot of just a little bit of turmoil. But it wasn't until I reversed that blame and started taking responsibility for who I am and what I do and what I think and what I say that I really kind of got that power back. And that was a process and a half. But like it was kind of middle school, high school where I really started getting more into like psychology and mindset and understanding people. Really, I wanted to understand myself, like I was saying, and like there was, I guess you could call it like imposter syndrome, right? Like wanting to be like the cool kid or wanting to be like someone else, like just really not seeing myself as good enough or worthy enough, right? So it's like crazy. It's like middle school, high school, like going through this existential crisis, right? But like so I started some of the first influences were like Tony Robbins, Patrick Bet-David, Grant Cardone, like hearing their take on business, on personal development, on just life in general. And it was like junior, senior year of high school, I really started seeing more so like business as the way to really make an impact versus the plan was to go to the NBA and use that as a platform. But really started seeing business because you look at a lot of high level guys, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, love them or hate them, right? The impact and the decisions that they make literally affect millions, if not billions of people. So I'm like, okay, if I'm here to change things in this world, right? Because I see it all around me, tons of problems. I have to get to that level. And so yeah, really looking at that, really started looking at more like business, entrepreneurship, because there's a little bit of a height requirement to the NBA as well, right? But yeah, like that's what first led me. I'm like, okay, I want to start a business. I have no idea what to do. I might as well start in sales because I want to learn how to communicate. It's fundamental to business. And if you really look at it, sales is everything. And so that's where I started. And yeah, from there, just been it's funny because like initially didn't have much success. But I was like, okay, that's kind of around the time I started meeting you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you showed me this thing, Technotutor. I'm like, okay, like I guess like you're saying this can change things. Like, okay, I'm a pretty skeptical guy, right? So like, okay, but I see education, I see you, I see Jess, and I see like everything that you're doing. I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And I ended up getting Technotutor, and then had a few different sales jobs. Right, ended up I became like one of the top reps, like 89 out of 20,000 for like a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 15 company. And so I got a luxury apartment at 20, where I was kind of more living the lifestyle, but then really started looking at like there was still something missing. Like there's still some, even though like this is great, like I'm not complaining, but it was almost like a little empty, right? Because I knew there's so many things that we need to sort out, and what I was doing was not impacting that in any way. And so there was like this cognitive dissonance, where I could just keep taking the blue pill, if you want to call it that, just pretend that what I'm doing is great and live the lifestyle and whatever, just go back into delusion. Or I could wake up and see that, okay, I'm here for a reason. Like there's a purpose that like I need to do something about this. And you were already working on some pretty cool things. I'm like, okay, like let's do this. I'm here to really create the best world, and I'm clear on that. And I made the decision, and we've been going ham ever since.
Yeah, just tell them too about the Patrick Bet-David thing, because that was like a really cool moment. Because I saw you really applying yourself, and then you came back from that event with like 80 new people in your network. I was like, oh, Pedro popped off. Yeah. Like me and Jess always knew from day one, we're like, he's got the potential. You fucking grabbed it.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, so that was this was the Vault Conference 2021. I'm like, okay, like gotta go make some things happen. conferences, I guess, are cool. I've never been to one, but I flew out. It was Fort Lauderdale, and I get there, right, and I'm already like, the anxiety starting to build, right, because at this point, this was still early on, right? I still was working through some of like the self-image and self-doubt and that type of stuff. And so I land, right? First time I've ever traveled alone. I think I'm 19, 18 or 19, and it was 19 at this time. And I'm like, okay, like I'm here, right? And so I go into the hotel, go to check in. They're like, yeah, you can't check it. You're too young. You need to be 21 to check in. So I'm like, what do I do? Right. I call my mom. We got to like, she has to send her like a letter, like saying that I can stay there, or that she takes responsibility or whatever. I'm like, God damn, like it's starting to build, right? Just like that anxiety and that pressure, my heart's beating a bit. Cause like the hotel was like a couple grand, the tickets like same price. Like it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't like I was definitely investing to go there, you could say. And I'm like, okay, like I need to go here and make some things happen. And like that pressure was building. And I remember like getting to my room, and at this point, like the pressure was at the tipping point. Like I'm all the, if you could call it like back chat, right? Like that little voice in the back of your head. All these things running through my mind, like it's hard to meet people, right? Like who do you think you are? Like I'm dropping couple racks to get this room, like all the different doubt and the fears, and like no one's gonna listen to you, you know, like what are you even doing here? All this stuff, all this emotion, it's like this storm, and I was just like possessed by it. Like I was just fully into it. And so I'm like freaking out of it. I'm like, God damn, like this, how am I gonna go up and talk to someone like this? Like they're gonna be like, what the fuck's going on? But I'm like, okay, like I have this techno-tutor thing, like let me use it. Like let me actually see what I can do, because I heard that, you know, you can kind of work on those deeper layers of the mind, and if you're going through like an emotional reaction, you can kind of bring yourself back to a point of stability. And so I did that process, and I remember closing my laptop and just sitting back and just taking like breath. I'm like, okay, like I'm here, right? And one thing with techno-tutor, you can put in like your the outcomes that you want and like the goals and stuff. And so I did a bunch of that. Like I meet the best people, I meet the right people, like I do business here, I make sales here. Like this event is a catalyst for expanding my net, like all these things that I was you could say programming into the subconscious, unconscious part of the mind. And I'm like, okay, cool. So this was like I flew in like a day or two before the conference. And so wake up the next day, I'm like, all right, like let's do this, right? And at least that's what I was thinking. There was still that little point like, okay, like can I really do this? But it was funny, man. Like literally the conference started, and we you know, in the beginning there's registration and everyone's coming in, you're meeting all these people. I'm like, okay, like, and it's at this point it's packed even just for registration. I'm like, okay, like what am I here to do? Like I'm here to meet people, make quality connections, add value in any way. And it was like think about Tom Brady. When he's throwing a football in the Super Bowl, he's not thinking like, wait, okay, let me throw this perfect spiral, like let me release it at this exact, it's just automatic, right? It's unconscious. He just knows what to do. He doesn't have to think about it. And that is literally how I felt. Like I put all these things, everything that I wanted to have happen into techno-tutor. And I felt like I just showed up and ran the play. Like literally people were coming up to me like it's hard to even describe. They're like, you're such an amazing speaker, like you're like so energetic, you're like amazing, like all this stuff, like literally exactly what I had put in. like you speak with so much certainty, confidence, like all this stuff. And I'm like, damn, like this is cool, and literally carried that momentum throughout the whole conference and left with literally like 80 plus like solid relationships. I made a sale literally at that event. I met like a bunch of business from that event as well. And it was really awesome just to see like that's when I knew that there was really something to this this technotutor thing. Like this thing works. Like it is undeniable. Like this is crazy. And so yeah, that was a really fun experience, really great event. And yeah.
Man, we've done a lot of events since then too.
Oh,
I mean, I wasn't
oh,
at the vault, but at the wedding, we had the Miami one, the Texas ones. There's a lot.
Driven on Cali.
Yeah. Pedro knows how to dance. So if you're ever at one of the events where they got the big dance Saturday night, it's hype. Play Gasolina.
Ooh, it's over. Gasolina always hits. Gasolina always hits. Or Pepas.
Yeah.
Always hits. Especially in Miami or Florida.
Yeah. Because we got then the event in San Diego, which like is literally our version of Davos. I mean, the World Economic Forum, they met once a year, every year since 1978. It's basically like the world leaders, politicians, business people, all that, influencers all come together, and then they talk about where's the world headed. But everything that's come out of the World Economic Forum, there's a lot of good meaning people there, don't get me wrong. But then there's also people who are like, look, how do we make sure that we stay in power? So yeah.
And anyone who has like a little bit of doubt of that, like literally just look at it. It's literally the most powerful people. You got politicians, you got world leaders, you got companies, you got Mark Zuckerberg, you got Bezos, you got the most powerful people in the room for like a weekend. It's like, okay, great. Yeah. What's going on? Like obviously there's a public appearance to it. It's like, really, you really think that's all they're talking about? They're flying in on their private jets. Who's checking their CO2 emissions, right? They're flying in literally on private jets, sometimes with fleets of private jets. And then they're going to talk to you about climate change. Like, okay, something's obviously not, it just does not add up. And I mean, if you look at, there's been a ton of like research and a ton of stuff that's come out of that, but really just look at like, do you think right now that Mark Zuckerberg has your best interest in mind? Do you think
he literally can't, because it's his legal responsibility to his shareholders to maximize profits? It's literally built into the system that he doesn't care about. And if you don't believe that, watch The Social Dilemma. It's still probably on Netflix.
Yeah.
I mean, you just see it. It's a nasty system.
Like, and top people like that, like the most powerful people come together. It's like, okay. But
yeah. And or there's a book called Future Proof by Kevin Roos. Really good. And he profiles, because he's been going to Davos for years as a journalist to see what are they talking about, because this is the cutting edge of technology and all that. And he goes, like 3 years ago, it was really interesting because on stage, they'd be like, yeah, automation's going to be great. It's going to help with, being efficient in the workplace, and it's going to help our workers have more fulfillment and all that. But he's like, over the last 2 years, it's taken a really strange turn where, again, the stuff that gets publicized on, YouTube and goes on the website is one thing. Then they have the after parties. And at the after parties, because Kevin Roos is in the room, he's like, it's disturbing how much the conversation has turned to how do we automate 90% of the workforce? Because they're basically liabilities. People are now. Because if you can have a robot do the job 24/7, you don't have to pay them benefits or anything like that. That's where this is headed. And again, it's not like the people in the room are intentionally trying to be evil. It's just how the incentives are lined up. And it's just, so we've seen this for a while. A lot of the people that we work with, we've seen this. And everyone complains and, oh, yeah, Klaus Schwab's evil or whatever. It's like, maybe not. But they know how to put people in a room. They know how to engineer that environment. And so that's what we've done with the group Self-Perfected, and the event is called Enter the 1%, where it's a way for all the people who want to be part of the solution to all get together for a weekend and actually talk about solutions, because we really care. Because does Bill Gates, can Bill Gates relate to the average person? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, Bill, he's kind of a nerd, whatever. It's like, his dad was the top lawyer in Seattle, and his mom was on the board of the United Way, and his mom introduced him to Warren Buffett. He came from the elite. Like, he was not just some average guy who got smart and then he got into Harvard and then figured out Microsoft. It's like, he was born into that. It's not to knock him. It's just, it's what it is. I mean, read his biography, Hard Drive. It's really fascinating to understand. But what we have is people that come from, it's like, we care about the average person we see on the street. I mean, you drive past a homeless guy and you're like, dang, like, I want to be able to help that person. But we understand it's a systemic change, right? But we know with the tools we have and the businesses that we have the ability to change that and have a blast, right? What are you most excited for about that event?
I'm excited. Number one, front row seats to JJ Finesser concert. But just like the level, every single time at an event, the level of conversation, the level of impact, the level of going to the next level, it's off the charts. And the events we've done before, like, nothing, this will pale in comparison to that. I mean, we have hundreds of people going there. It's going to be insane.
Yeah.
It's literally going to be something that's never been done before.
Yeah. And then you got all these Technotutor kids coming together. So it's like Max, like, all of them now able to start masterminding because they're at that age now where they can really talk as equals. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot we have in store. So what do you think? Purpose and reality. We talked about purpose. Talked a little bit about reality. What would you say for the people listening? What message do you have for them for us to wrap this up on?
Yeah, purpose and reality. Align yourself with that. Really, again, like, what will you stand for in this life? You have one life. And if you look at it, if you look at the idea that, like, we are truly equals, right? Like, and that we are interconnected. If you look at that idea, there's a lot of truth to that. Like, that is how things work. What I do impacts you. What you do impacts other people. It's just how we operate. We live in an interdependent world. And so what you do or what you don't do has an effect. And that's the real question. Like, what effect do you want to have in this life? Do you want to do great things? And the only reason you wouldn't want to is because you don't believe that you can do it. Because you've had again, going back to 0-7 years, these influences, these beliefs, these doubts put into your head that tell you that you can't go do something amazing with your life. Like, I'm here to say that you can and you need to, right? Because really, really think about that. Imagine, like, it's 80, 100 years in the future and you're on your deathbed and you're sitting there, right? Oxygen mask in, you're breathing heavy, no one's around you, right? It's like your final moments. And you hear a knock on the door. You hear the door open. You hear footsteps walking in. Your eyes are closed, right? Like, you just hear this. And you see someone standing next to your bedside. And you're breathing, right? Like, it's getting hard to breathe. You're in your last moments. You're kind of thinking about life, right? And you see this person standing next to your bed. You wipe your eyes a bit. Your eyes adjust to the darkness. And you see who you could have been. You see the person that you could have become. You see the things that you could have done, the life you could have lived, the people you could have helped. And in that moment, that is what hell feels like. Seeing who you could have become and seeing who you were. So, yeah, like, go all out. That's the message. Go all out. Go all out in creating the best world possible. Go all out in being focused on solutions. Go all out in serving your community. because the world needs it. The world needs you. That's what I got to say.
Wow. Perfection, man. Excited to have you on again in whenever we do the next one, because man, every time I see you, you're leveling up. So
First of many.
thanks. Let's go.
Let's get it.
That was Chris. Let's go. Always.